And we're live. Welcome, everybody. We're virtually connecting at Open Education Berlin. We have our on-site buddies and our on-site guests, Christian and Kate. First, we're going to go ahead and do virtual introductions, and then we're going to move on-site. So very quickly, I'm Nadina Belmegd. I work at the Center for Learning and Teaching at the American University in Cairo. I do online content development for faculty who are teaching blended and online. So I do a lot of work online and open. And I was just telling Maha that this is basically my own version of Open Week, because I've had a lot of conversations about open education, teaching and learning this week. And I'm probably going to go on pretty much forever, but I'm saying intensely the next couple of days. And that's me. So why don't we go ahead with Maha Beli, our co-virtual buddy this session. And then afterwards, we're going to do Robin, then Helen can introduce herself and Joseph, and then we're going to move on to on-site people who are going to tell us all about their session and the conference generally and take it from there.
Did you say me first? Because it was cutting up. Okay, so this is Maha Beli from Cairo, Egypt. And Huda, do you want to introduce yourself? You want to say I'm Huda from Egypt? Because she's been wanting to talk to Nadine ever since she saw her. So.
Hi Huda, okay, I'm very happy to see you.
Take it away, everybody else.
Hello, I'm Robin DeRosa. How's the sound? I know there was a bit of an echo before. Is it okay? All right. I'm in the US in New Hampshire, and I am a professor and director of interdisciplinary studies. So my students are doing self-design majors that cross over multiple departments. I also do a lot of work on open educational resources and open pedagogy and just working out on the web in general with my students.
I'm not sure. I'll go next. Can you hear me? I'm Helen Ward. I'm in Central Ontario, work for the University, Lakehead University in Faculty of Education, working with teacher candidates. And I work in the open. Open is my default mode. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Helen. Joseph, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Joe Murphy. I'm the director of the Center for Innovative Pedagogy at Kenyon College in Gambier, Central Ohio, USA. I think that we've started having more conversations about working in the open at Kenyon, and I'd like to know more about what other people are doing and how I can advance that conversation here.
Great, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Christian and Kate, do you guys want to go next?
Kate, you go first. You have to unmute, I think. Should I just go ahead then?
No, it's fine. It's just my browser just stopped for a moment. I'm Kate Green, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Nottingham. I'm a big advocate of open education, but I'm also have another awkward advocacy for privacy in the digital realm, I suppose. Christian.
Okay. Well, hi everybody. I'm Christian. I work with Lafana Digital School and Hamburg University of Technology on open education and everything from policy to infrastructure to content. And I'm here at the OEB 16 in Berlin in the glamorous Hotel Intercontinental, as you can tell by my backdrop.
Yeah. Christian, it looks like you're sitting in a very comfortable chair that's swinging, and I think that makes the Google Hangouts go crazy.
Okay, really?
Your background changes a lot, so when you're talking, don't do
that. Okay, I'll try not to. It's just, too tentative.
Yeah, I understand. So you and Kate just facilitated a session, so we'd love to hear live about how that went for both of you, from both sides, the virtual side and the on-site side.
Okay, so our session was called Towards Openness, How Can We Be Safe and Open in Online Learning? And we started off by a quick intro by Kate and me about our perceptions on privacy and safety, and then the idea of Towards Openness. And then we had 4 provocations towards that theme, actually, by Robin, Nishan Shah, and by Kate. And after that, we asked, at least here on site, I asked participants to take those provocations and transfer that to a certain stakeholder group in their well, audience, sort of, and design interventions that are directed towards enhancing and enabling open and safe learning online. And I think the online session went a bit differently, didn't it, Kate? I'm moving again, I'm sorry.
Stop it, Christian. Yeah, I mean, we had to kind of mitigate against circumstances for me not being there, and I thought perhaps an online conversation would help, but obviously that does depend on people actually being there synchronously, which, you know, there wasn't that many, let's be honest. But I mean, it's still there for people to, you know, dip into should they wish to answer some questions and look at the provocations. But we knew that there was going to be a bit of a challenge when we had made, you know, an on-site workshop and trying to make that kind of a bit more of a hybrid space. It was going to be a challenge, and it was. So I'm sure we'll debrief probably at some point to see whether we could do that better, I suppose.
I think audiences make a big difference to these kinds of experimental designs of workshops. So if you're doing it at some place like the Digital Pedagogy Lab, where a lot of the audience would be comfortable with that kind of thing, you might get maybe there's a lot more diversity and more parallel sessions, so people, you know, choosing between them. But the great thing about what you guys did is that you developed a resource for others. Like Nadine and I this morning were preparing a session about digital literacy and safety. And I was like, yeah, those, you know, Nishant's propagation for that. And we were talking about politics and how that's affecting social media. And so Robin's provocation for that. And that's going to be a resource for people to use. That's an open educational resource that you guys just created, right? It's just there on both of your websites and on SoundCloud. And it's wonderful beyond the synchronous, you know. It's going to benefit a lot more people, I think.
Yeah, I think we were really hoping to kind of have the whole openness embody the workshop so that we could have things that would, you know, last a lot longer. So we wanted to have provocations from people from all over the world, from different, you know, backgrounds, diversity, you know, in that kind of openness, and have open access, allow people who weren't physically there to be able to participate in some way. So we really tried to kind of go at it at all angles in some, which was, I suppose, quite ambitious. But I think we're really pleased to actually now have a SoundCloud account, and there's actually some traction and people commenting on the different provocations already. So I think it's a nice start, I suppose, towards openness as a project.
Yeah. No, I think so as well. And I mean, we mentioned it briefly yesterday, Online Educa is one of the most expensive conferences in our realm, in our discipline, if that's what it is, in Europe. So an average participant paid, including taxes, somewhat around 1,200 euros. And we had some barriers to overcome to actually integrate people from outside of the conference and to make their voices heard. And that in itself, and having done that, is still a good feeling, even though the online participation or even the on-site participation could have been stronger.
Yeah, I think we upset.
I never understood why conferences that are corporate have such high registration. Sorry, I think there's a lag, so I think I just spoke over you, Kate. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I just said that I think we upset OEB by actually, you know, disrupting their paid-for conference by making it so open.
Yeah, and there's, I think, somewhat around 40 vendors with stands around here, so you can't really go to a session without being harassed by some LMS provider if you don't want to try their product or their virtual reality thing or whatever it is they have. And that's all interesting, but it's really, you have to ask whether it's the chandeliers that you pay for.
I was wondering if we should create fake business cards for the vendors with the wrong email address. Okay. I was also thinking people can talk.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you were saying about what Kate was saying about, you know, participation and not necessarily having as many people in there as you wanted at various points. But I also think it's really interesting to me how V-Connecting disrupts the sort of the temporal aspect of conferences as well. Because there's something really amazing about synchronicity, which is what conferences are all about, right? You come together at this specific place. But I just think about even like Twitter chats, which are all about synchronicity. sometimes I get so much out of them if I can't participate and I go back later and just kind of read them in a more narrative way, and then sort of pick and choose. So I do think it's hard to judge the value of something that leaves an artifact, you know, because you've opened up so much more time. And that's for me also such a benefit of working in the open, that my students do these assignments. They're wonderful. There's a temporal aspect in how it affects the course that we're in and the conversations that we have right there. But then to see like subsequent years of students come in, engage with those prior texts, and everything just gets enriched. So I do think open is very disruptive of synchronicity, which is so much of how all of education is organized. So maybe, you know, that's also a very cool lesson when things, we're used to thinking of things as sort of like flopping, you know, when you just put out and you don't immediately get back. But maybe we have to develop new metrics for understanding, you know, the value of those things over longer periods.
The other interesting thing you're pointing to there, Robin, is that open in some contexts also implies not static. That it's not just that each new iteration of each new group of people can come in and see your open resource as if it were a book, but that you can participate in a long, slow conversation. And I think that's challenging to a lot of people because we like things with a beginning, middle, and an end. But I think it's an interesting question to ask about, when you say open, what kind of open do you mean?
Yeah, and just to draw off that, because when you said slow, that's such an interesting word right now, because there's people sort of talking about the slow professor and slowing down, and that's so at odds with sort of like the back channel, right, which is so frenetic, and the way we like the pace of how I work now is ridiculous compared to what I used to do, say 3 or 4 years ago. And now I'm just like putting stuff out there all the time, and you know, sometimes I feel afraid at how fast it moves. But there's a backside to that, which is actually very slow, because you might put things out more quickly and the river is constantly flowing, so that feels like speed. But underneath that is also the ability to be recursive, to reconsider, to think about things multiple times, to iterate, and all that stuff is slow process. So I love that you said that word, because it's making me think like, oh, maybe my freneticism is also part of a thoughtfulness, you know, or can be part of a thoughtfulness that's part of the open work. So I love that.
And it really makes, for me, it's the connection. You said you may have only touched a few people in the audience, Christian, who are physically there, but it's the people who will benefit from kind of the ripples in the pond. You started the conversation, and it may be a small conversation, but ultimately it'll become kind of a richer, deeper global conversation. So it's good to start. And you say it's a step towards something. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't mean to sound too frustrated. It was still, I think for me at least, it was a good experience to have that session and to work towards something on the one hand, but also to sync it up with what was happening online. I've never done that before, to have a session and to have a conversation going on live online as well. But also the people who stayed, and Inge de Ward was one of them, and Janine Reutemann, who will be joining us tomorrow as well. They really got something out of that, and they left with like these gloomy eyes, saying they had been inspired and all that. And that's nice to hear. I mean, everybody in the Hangout will probably can probably relate to that feeling, and that's still good. And having that resource to point to and to say, we'll take it from there and we'll see what we can spin off of this, is really something that most people around here don't have. I mean, we had the conversation of people yesterday as well, of people doing PowerPoints with like Times New Roman 12 point, and like the very basic thing that you always see and hate at academic conferences. I've seen loads of those today, and those people can point towards an open resource that has been developed collaboratively with others, and that in itself is a reward.
I'm curious, Christian, because obviously I'm not there, which seems weird considering I helped create this thing. But what actually came out of it? I mean, what were the sort of things that, you know, were discussed, I suppose?
So we had, at the beginning, we had 20 people in the session, of whom around about 8 or 10 left after the provocations. But we then split up into 2 groups, and one group came up, and I actually recorded presentations of them. The Wi-Fi is just too slow for me to upload it here, so that will have to come later. The one group had a very interested participant. She was there like 30 minutes early from a Dutch NGO, and they are working to put stories of children online in 113 countries worldwide. 14 years upwards, and they had this very problem that we're dealing with all the time. So how much space do you give people? How much literacy, digital literacy and media literacy training do you give them before they work on your behalf online? And she had a very pragmatic approach to the session and sat there with like pen and paper and said, give me solutions, I need answers now. And we formed a team around that helped to map out different problem structures, I think, and then worked on very pragmatic solutions for her. So everything from a policy perspective to infrastructure, anonymity, privacy, and all that. And the other group was a bit more out there, I suppose. They were working on their initial problem was that people who work together across borders very often have different understandings and privacy settings and understandings of privacy when they work together, and very often censorship comes in as well. So the case of working with Chinese researchers, which I just know from Germany is a pain, just because of the walls that you have to cross, literally and digitally. And their claim to fame was, let's create the Tor network of collaborative research and writing. And let's create, like, on the one hand, a society, but also a technical solution that helps researchers from all over the place to collaboratively write and to blur authorship. So a Chinese researcher, in order to speak her mind, might need anonymity to a certain degree, and they were working on something like that. And that was the group with Inge and Janine Reutemann. Luca Morini was in there as well, and that was really a nice presentation. I think they also tried to create some kind of excerpt of what it is that they came up with in the Campfire Etherpad. So that was really nice to see and to take it from there. I think 1 or 2 of these conversations will be going on afterwards. I'm pretty sure for the participant from the Dutch NGO, but also the others didn't seem to be finished yet. So that's what's been going on here, at least.
I think we've had a couple people join us. Tanis and Dilrakshi, would you like to introduce yourselves? Can we hear you?
Sure. Oh, can you? Sorry. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Hi. I'm actually I'm Dilrakshi from Sri Lanka, but not right now. I'm in Mumbai, India, for ICCE conference and educational conference, and I have been following basically Malcolm in her Twitter, so that's how I got to know the community and then the open source world and the network of people. So I'm really learning because I have been taking MOOCs, X MOOCs particularly, and then really fed up because there's no people behind it. Now, this community, I like it because I enjoy learning from different people. Every person is a learning community that I can learn. So I really look forward to meet new people.
Great. Well, I'll jump in there. I'm Tanis Morgan. I'm dialing in, I guess, from Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm at the Justice Institute, and I've been sort of intrigued by this way of connecting to conferences for a little while, and this just seemed like a really good opportunity because I've never made it to Online Educa Berlin ever, and certainly it competes with a lot of other options and limited budgets and that sort of thing. So I actually really welcome this opportunity to be here, and really I just wanted to see what it was all about, and of course to hear what goes on at this conference. So thanks for making this happen.
It's basically all Christian making this conference happen. So thank you so much, Christian, for all that. And it's his first time too, so.
Well, I'm happy to be a part of it. It's really nice.
I
so
agree.
tell us what else has been happening.
Center stage.
So, the question was, what is happening at Online Educa in general? Is that did I get it? Okay, good. So from what I can tell, Online Educa is a very, how do you say that? Well, non-European online education conference. So if you've been to places like OER or the eMOOCs conferences and all that, this is much more corporate. So the mixture here is very much 50-50 between educators from not schools, but mostly higher education and private institutions, but also many vendors. I've never been offered a virtual reality tour that often in my life. It's quite tech-driven. There are lots of panels on learning analytics, predictive analytics, big data. There's one going on right now on artificial intelligence. And I personally miss the social connected learning parts a bit and open as well. So Luca yesterday rightfully noted that this is the Online Educa and not the Open Educa, and you can tell. It is one, at least appears to be one of the places to go if you want to make connections, even though I personally have made way more connections that I think I will keep on pursuing at other conferences. So, but this is a great place to get into fights, for me at least. So yesterday there was this speaker's reception, and that's just anecdotal, but there was this speaker's reception where we were sorted to speakers' tables, depending on our sessions. And I ran into this guy who runs the marketing and communications department of a huge pharmaceutical company. And he also has a budget for learning online and analytics of that. And he was very much caught in this disruption narrative of everything. So, and if you hit me up with like statements like that, and I have my second glass of wine in my hand, there's very good chance that we'll be in an argument. And that was really good for me, at least, to sharpen arguments too. So I think it really helps to be exposed to these environments as well. And it's not hostile at all. It's very friendly, but it's really good training, almost like sparring for home. So it's nice.
Nadine and I were yesterday at a conference here that was supposed to be about open education. But there's a lot of problems with it. One of them is that nobody knew what open education was, but they were speaking on the stage about it. And they were basically talking about e-learning that you pay for and calling it open education, because they're thinking about, you know, the old concept of open university rather than the current concept. And they were the kinds of people who were saying about how proud they were of automated multiple choice questions to assess learning in an objective way. And so it was really frustrating to be in that room. And then to get up and talk about self as OER to a group of people who were talking about that, it was just... So I can't imagine like an entire conference that would be people just on a different wavelength, but it wasn't unfriendly. Like, it's not unfriendly, it's just that I guess, in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, just to maybe even from a broader perspective, at this moment, there's another conference going on in Berlin, which is sponsored by the Hochschulforum Digitalisierung. So that's basically a lobby organization driven by different foundations and organizations in Germany who want to digitize or who want to promote digitization of education with the best intentions. But I was there this morning because I had to attend one first session there, and it very much feels like they haven't caught up to this whole analytics, predictive analytics narrative. And I'm just waiting to see what happens, and when they do, how they will cope with that, because there's huge corporate money involved as well, just as is here. And there's, for example, Bertelsmann, who have just partnered with Google and Amazon to deliver nano degrees, are funding higher education initiatives here in Germany. And Germany has always been regarded, at least by me, as somewhat a safer space when it comes to all these corporate narratives and then all that, but it seems to be getting here as well. And that's really, I think we need to buckle up and then do something here as well.
Yeah, you know, you said when you were talking about, you know, that these corporations have good intentions, and I think you're being, you know, maybe more charitable, because I guess what I wonder is, like, if you just think about something like personalized learning, right? Depending on what the profit motive is in personalized learning, oftentimes personalized means like exactly the opposite thing of personalized, right? It means algorithmically generated so that we can deliver maximum efficiency, which is really different than delivering individually to individual students, which is not overly efficient. And so I guess I really wonder about like the co-opting of open rhetorics, and you know, every time somebody talks about personalized learning, if they're trying to sell an ed tech predictive analytics product, I feel like, I don't even know if it's a conflict of interest, but I just think we need enough critical digital literacy to be able to see that we're getting a sales pitch and to be able to read how those terms are getting used. And I don't really necessarily see the people who are making decisions about this stuff in higher ed having enough digital literacy to be able to recognize this company who is selling this predictive analytics product and calling it personalized advising or personalized learning is actually not delivering that. It's delivering something else, which we may or may not want. But I think, you know, to me, I'm such an advocate of public education, and I'm just very skeptical about the profit motive in learning in general. But I understand that puts me at odds, like basically with, you know, the world. So I sort of try to dwell in this other place. And, you know, I'm sensitive to things like Lumen and David Wiley's latest post, where he's talking about the way good stewards in private business can do amazing things for learning and for open. And so I don't want to discount that those things are possible, but that's such a small piece of like this ed tech behemoth that is coming at us using all the language of all of the stuff that we care about, but morphing the meaning of those words into something really, really different in order to sell a product. And that doesn't feel good to me.
Yeah. I was just, as you were talking, Robin, I was thinking of a conversation we're having over at Mastodon, the new social network thing. And one of the things we're talking about is that the decision makers who buy these things or who make decisions to buy them don't have pedagogical literacy. And nobody ever says this word. I don't think that word exists, pedagogical literacy, that term, but I think I just made it up. And what I think the problem is that those of us who do have that aren't usually in positions to take these decisions, or, you know, we can talk and we'll look crazy in the midst of that meeting with all the administrators. And then, like, maybe we need to sort of, we need more advocacy to do that kind of thing, or to do the kind of work that Paul Prinsloo says, which is decolonizing learning analytics. Like, if you're gonna use learning analytics, then let's be more critical about how we're using them. If, you know, institutions kind of feel that they're needed because they're delivering online courses to hundreds of people, then maybe they feel it's needed. I don't know what other people think, though.
I think that one of the thinking about towards openness as kind of a concept, and as a project that Christian and I are kind of working with Nishant and other people. God, the names have escaped me, but I think if this is like a really big problem that, you know, there's several of us here who, you know, we all kind of empathize with this same problem, then perhaps then this is a good step forward. And how can we, you know, create these, I don't know, like stuff that we can actually send, you know, we can actually aggregate some, you know, information, get enough people interested and talking about it, so that we can actually go to these, you know, change makers, the policy makers, and actually, you know, build our case toward, you know, for them. I mean, if there is enough of us who are interested in doing it, then I think that's what towards openness is actually there for. So,
you know, I find myself wondering what the structural forces that are leading to these decisions being made without input are, and to what extent they're fightable. And in fairness, they're often imposed. They're imposed because they're imposed on graduate students and adjuncts who may not perceive that they have the power to fight and really may not have it. They're imposed when, you know, the accounting office or the accrediting body or whatever office is able to impose. But I also find myself thinking that an awful lot of them, this from a more administrative point of view, also comes, and perhaps this goes back to the slow professor issue, it comes from people who are not engaged with decision-making processes. I wonder how many of them are imposed because faculty governance has decided to attention elsewhere. And it seems that that's something that I'm not seeing. It's interesting to me that I'm not seeing that proposed as a solution. When people talk about it, they don't say, why isn't the faculty senate, why aren't your committees in these conversations? And it seems that to make any kind of change, it needs to get past the interested body of people with the knowledge and into something. If we have a structural problem, we're going to have to fight it with a structure. That's what it seems to me.
I mean, it appeared to be today, for example, in our session where we had these partially very strong provocations with I'm not saying ideological, but with a very clear picture of what an ideal world might look like, maybe, in mind. And I think those people who you'd usually point at when you say vendors were the ones who left. And on the other hand, those people who were still left in the room were already, and that would actually be my main critique of this whole thing, is that we're not able, even though there are loads of people here who we would actually want to reach with questions like these, without pointing fingers and without insults or anything like that, but those are the people who need convincing. Those both vendors, but decision makers from universities. There's very few professors and very few educators here, but mostly strategic decision makers at universities. And I wish that the room that actually fits 60 people had more of them. And I'm not sure. I mean, I've never seen a concept where people were really able to find ways of approaching these groups, if you want to call it that, after all. And in decision making, the people who were left in the room were people that didn't need much convincing, and still only few of them had the agency and the power to be to influence decision making processes on a strategic or a policy level even.
Yeah. It's making me sad, but it's true. I think this is probably a problem that happens across the world, and yeah. So at conferences, the people who will come are the people who don't need that much convincing. They're already on the edge anyway. Or so how do you reach the others? I think one of the people who tries really hard to do this, and I don't know if he does it, if he succeeds, is George Siemens. He tries hard. I mean, as someone who's pretty radical, right? He tries hard to be able to talk the language of policymakers, but I think. Based on a recent conversation we had with him, I think by doing that, sometimes there are certain things on the, like, beyond his own radical edge that he can't then do anymore. And I don't know how to sort of not lose, you know, your radicalness in your attempt to be able to bridge that conversation. It's, I mean, I think a lot of people who I'm thinking about a lot of people like Gardner Campbell and Amy Collier who are in positions of power in their institutions, but they were also talking about how they can't last very long because they're so radical. So that's, I don't know.
Yeah, I've been thinking about, I actually had a dinner with Gardner where he was talking about, well, I was sort of proposing that I think it's time for what I was kind of calling an alt admin movement. It's time for all of the people in the middle, like us, who have oftentimes rejected administrative positions because we like to work on the edges and the administration is more in the moderate middle, and also because we like teaching, right? So, you know, like the opportunities come and we say no a lot. So I was saying it's time for like an alt admin movement where we say we got to step up and you know, kind of take it for the team and see enough people move into those positions and not just leave that work to other people. And I don't know if it was because like I was drinking a lot of booze at that dinner, but by the time I finished, I was like, oh, we'll do it, you know. And then when I woke up in the morning, I actually still a little bit felt like, yeah, maybe I will do this. Because I do think if we had more people, even just kind of like at the dean level, who were more, oh great, my automatic light went off. Now I have to wave my hand like a chicken. So, you know, if we had more people at that level, not so much to lead, because honestly, I think when you get to that level, you're gonna burn out too quickly or get burned too quickly if you step out too radically. So once you get to that level, the key is to find those people who are doing the good work at the ground level and just support them, right? Which is a new administrative vision, is that these are support positions rather than leadership positions, which is, I think, a very open PED kind of concept. But I've been thinking that it's time, you know, for lots of these folks who I consider to be, you know, you hear that sort of highly annoying phrase, thought leaders. And the reason it just annoys me is because these are thought leaders. They're amazing. They're doing such great work. They're so inventive, and they have so much to offer. And yet they don't really have any institutional power. Otherwise, they'd be referred to, you know, by those titles. So maybe what we have to do is find ways to get those thought leaders into positions of institutional power. And I say that as a believer in institutions, right? I think I'm a believer in public. And so public is, in my opinion, it's an institutional idea. The commons is something with a shape, in my opinion. So I think to lead that shaped or commons vision, we need some folks who are able to let the people who are doing that really good grassroots work have an impact beyond the margins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Rob, I want to pat myself on the back, actually, and pat my institution on the back. Robin, we've got a structure like that at Kenyon. We have 3 associate provosts that are on 4-year appointments, which it does a lot of what you said, so I don't have to say it again. One of the interesting things is that then those people are supposed to go back to the faculty, and it has some interesting impacts of on our debates when people can say either inside a department when they're trying to do something, okay, the provosts are going to be expecting this, let's give it to them, or even in the faculty meeting to say, these are not others. These are not those, people that got hired from something you don't understand and came in. And that's been really productive. And now you're making me wonder why we don't have them in my center or in more offices, why did we stop at 3 has just become the question that I have to ask.
Mm-hmm. I think, just to quickly barge in, I think the OER conferences, or DML, where Robin and I met for the first time in October, to some extent you come back, everybody talks about coming back energized from that and getting to work. But just as any other vacation, I think it wears off pretty quickly and you can tell, at least I can tell when I look in the mirror in the morning, that it has worn off. And it always, looking back on it, it always feels a bit like the Open Education Anonymous group, where you come together and just sit and smile and nod and pat yourself on the back and pat others on the back and rub your bellies and say, hey, you're doing a great job there. And that is needed, I think. But it took me, and I mean, Leuphana is a very small university, or a mid-sized university with 7,000 students, but in German public context is small to mid-size. And from the very beginning, I had the executive vice president's ear when it came to online education, but it took me over 4 years to be in a position where I would actually be attributed a budget towards open education activities. And then it comes to questioning what is your definition and understanding of open. I mean, we had open online courses that were on a closed platform, so there are shades of open, I guess, but you're absolutely right. Those thought leaders and those people who have everybody's ear when they want it still seem to be regarded as exotic animals in the open education, or in the educational landscape of sorts, right? Even people like George Siemens or Gardner Campbell, there are no German equivalents of that at this moment that I would point to, but it's strange somehow that doesn't really take off.
Can I jump in for a second? We're sort of approaching the 45 to 50-minute mark, and I just wanted to let everybody know that they can leave. Christian, do you have to go, or Kate, or anybody? We usually keep these VC sessions around 45 minutes to 1 hour. So what do you guys think? Okay, I think we can end the broadcast, and maybe if you guys want to keep talking afterwards for a few more minutes, we could do that.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Sure.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for virtually connecting with us at Online Educa. Have a great day or night, depending on wherever you are in the world. Bye.
Bye-bye.